He opened his first wing joint at 20 years old with only $30,000 and a broken hood fan. Today, he runs a fast-growing restaurant group with 14-plus locations. In this episode, Brian reveals to us how he built Wing Shack, started Sexy Sammies, and created a brand that guests absolutely love. I hope you enjoy. Brian, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Awesome. Excellent to be here. Thanks for having me.
Likewise, I'm super excited to feature your story on this episode. I think we talked a couple days ago, and hearing how you started in the game was really inspiring. And now I think 20 years later, 15 years later, I don't want to date you, but after this time, you've built up like an amazing group of restaurants, concepts, and an amazing team behind you. So for my audience that doesn't know some of your brands, you mind telling us a little about yourself and how you got into the game?
Absolutely. I'm Brian Seifried. We rock Centennial Hospitality Group out of northern Colorado and southern Wyoming. I was born and raised in Colorado. Went to school at CSU for a little bit until I got antsy and decided to hop into the restaurant business. In 2004, we opened our first restaurant called Wing Shack in a town called Greeley, Colorado, home of University of Northern Colorado. Go Bears!
Go Bears!
And since then we've grown Wing Shack into 14 locations, 14 coming up in about 10 days or so. And then kind of 2028, we added a full service taco and tequila joint, and 2021 added a quick serve chicken tender joint called Sexy Sammies.
Awesome. Tell me about that first location of the Wing Shack. You were telling me you walked into this place and it was in a tiny square footage kitchen that used to be, was it a kitchen before? And then at the top, there was an apartment that you took over as well. And I remember you telling me that the waters just started leaking down. Tell us a little bit about that first location.
Yeah. So budget was tight, right? We kind of begged, borrow, and stole $30,000 to put together. My brother was my partner at the time. I was 20 years old. We worked in the industry for a long time, but never owned, and found this little hole in the walls old timer that owned it, old World War II vet. And it was, for rent sign in the window that was kind of handwritten. And it was $750 a month rent for the downstairs and $450 for the apartment upstairs. It was a hole in the wall. It was like a food truck, kind of a roach coach had been out of it in the past. And it was kind of a defunct restaurant that we slapped some paint up. And when we first opened, we turned the fryers on, and like day 2, the fryer started smoking a little bit, and we didn't know the hood fan didn't work, so the whole place filled up with like greasy smoke.
That's horrible.
It was kind of how it rolled. We had some box fans set up out the back hallway for those first few weeks, but yeah, the shack had truly shacky beginnings. Still, that location still operates this day. We've remodeled, put a few bucks into it since then.
That's amazing. What was the goal going into it? Did you want to just start one restaurant? Did you have a vision to scale this into a brand of some sort? What was the thinking around going into owning your own restaurant?
At 20 years old, it wasn't the longest thought plan. I was going to school, wasn't too certain on a direction. The idea of partnering up with my brother and the idea of doing something on our own was big. And I think the goal was just to make it work at that point, and try not to have to pay our parents back all the money out of our own, out of working it off when we closed the restaurant, but out of a profitable restaurant. And, probably if you'd asked me then, we'd build this up and sell it and move on to the next adventure in life. But one thing led to another. And now Wing Shack is home and Greeley's home. And here we are.
When did you start to see the signs that you landed on a good concept? Was it something that you felt like after opening up the second or third location, or was it something that is only now coming to you after all this time that you've kind of found a nice sweet spot, something that is, I consider, untapped need in the market that you're operating in?
Yeah, I think it took a while for us to come into our own. We, 2004, we opened number 1, ended up buying my brother out pretty quickly, opened up number 2 in 2006. And there were some struggles there. It didn't quite hit. We weren't printing money out of number one, but it
Yeah,
was
for sure.
making a living at that time. Making a living didn't take that much, you know. But location two was a little slower to start and a real big challenge, right? I think going from one location to two locations is maybe one of the most difficult parts. Um,
What
of,
was difficult about that second location?
I mean, I think the whole thing went from just being me and my hand in every team member, every order, really, every interaction with the guests, to systemizing that for the first time, and
Right.
I think that was the big challenge of building leaders and building systems as opposed to being the leader and being the system. So there was definitely a learning curve there for me. You know, I'd been a shift lead at some places before, but
Right.
I've never managed a restaurant.
Managed.
Um, so that was definitely some challenges, and you know, couldn't afford to buy the experience of a experienced manager. We had some other partners and some great team members on along the way that helped align us and push us towards. You know, I'm more of an ideas guy than a system guy at heart, but I've
Yeah.
got great people behind me that have like, Brian, let's write a few of these things down. You know,
Yeah. The standard operating procedures, right?
absolutely. You know, bring
Yeah.
some acronyms up in here, right? We need more acronyms. I always push back on the acronyms to this day. I'm like, let's just say it all out loud, guys. But you know, it was challenging to get that going, but it was a big learning curve, and we didn't, you know, there was a little more to the story, but we didn't open the third and fourth wing shack till 2012.
That's a long time. Yeah.
Yeah, and we had, you know, I opened a bar in there, and you know, there was a few other parts of that story, but you know, it took a while for us to grow into that, um, and then I think it's really when three and four came pretty close to each other in 2012, and that was really the moment where I was like, we're doing something special here. We're doing something that can resonate. We're doing something um, that could be big and could be duplicated and not only make a living for myself and my family, but help a lot of, you know, the team around me grow and develop as well.
Amazing. I remember when we last spoke, you talked about this nostalgic feeling that you used to get when you would go into the old school Pizza Huts, where you have all the families kind of hanging around. There were games. There was a lively atmosphere, right? Is that something that you've kind of modeled the Wing Shack after, right? This place where people can come together and spend like good chunk of time and be able to get good food, get good drinks, have good company. What was your vision around the aura of the brand itself?
Yeah, I mean, we've kind of grown into that. I mean, we've from the early days we had a little Pac-Man machine in the corner, which was more like hanging out and, you know, playing an old school game with the kiddos while you wait for wings. But I think that nature of sharing a pile of wings and kind of breaking bread and uh, eating with your hands and just there's a
Very
communal
primal.
nature. Yeah, and just like a communal nature to sharing wings with people, and whether that's in a restaurant or takeout, I think that kind of adds on too. But I think as we grew and opened, that third location was the first one that was a little bit bigger, that we actually had beer on tap, and that people were, it was kind of next to a bunch of ball fields, right? So a bunch of little league teams would come in, and you know, parents would have a pitcher of beer and the kids would eat a bunch of wings and run around in the lawn outside. Was kind of where it crystallized that there's a niche here that's a little bit missing in the marketplace of, you know, we don't want to be like a full bar, right? We don't want to be
Right.
someone who come to drink and then have a snack,
Right.
or even like a Buffalo Wild Wings type level of
Right.
bar. But I think we've met that ground in between, that we're not fast food. It is a place where you can hang out. It is a
Right.
place where you can enjoy your friends and family or coworkers and build relationships and have fun without being kind of a full service experience. And that, you know, I do think it kind of harkens back to that old school Pizza Hut vibe, to where it's kind of just a place where you gather, in a place where the neighborhood gets together. And whether you're out with some friends and a few adults, or you're bringing the kids, or whatever the reason is, it's just a comfortable, casual place to hang. Less chain smoking than the old
Yeah,
pizza.
the old days.
And chain
Yeah.
smoking in the back, you know. Um, but I think, and then we've grown into that. You know, we kind of have the wing shacks. We still have some smaller size ones that are a little more takeout focused. You know, kind of 10 or 12 tables, and then um, kind of it's turned into a little bit larger of a hangout, which is fun. And I think, you know, is more rare in this world that's more and more dominated by QSR, right? There's no social experience. Like, you drive through, or you eat in the dining room, you don't talk to anybody else, and you sit down and you eat as fast as you can, and you go on to the other part of life, which, there's a purpose for that, right? We're all in a hurry sometimes. But I think, a place where you can slow down and gather, but it's still casual. The kids can run around. You can make a little bit of noise. You don't feel pressured by a server that wants their next table or is kind of bugging you to get out of the way. But, we're still counter service. So I think it really creates a kind of a unique atmosphere that you can hang out, and it's not that kind of closed off full service feel as well.
That's interesting, actually. There's a couple of concepts that come to mind that do something similar, mostly independently owned chains that have this element of it's like a full service experience where you can sit down and you can spend a lot of time, like an hour, hour and a half at the restaurant, but then you eliminate the servers, which helps tremendously with costs. And also, as you brought up, I never even thought about it, how customers perceive that, right? When they're able to get their food and just hang out, they don't feel pressured by the waiter coming by and wanting to bus and get the next table going. I think that creates like a different environment. And I've actually never thought about it. And then there's also another angle to it that I've been thinking a lot about is nowadays, I feel like brands, especially the restaurant industry, is getting tougher than ever. It's all about how do you keep the margin as high as possible, keep customers coming in and out. And I've seen some like fast casual brands experimenting with drive-throughs, more so like pickup windows as a way for them to meet some of their customers where they are. Some people are on the go and they want to be able to eat their favorite food. And this just adds an extra layer of hospitality, an extra layer of service that you can get for your customers. But then the trade-off to that is then if you go full drive-through at some of your concepts, then it kind of morphs into that and people start to associate your brand with being like a fast producing product. So just wanted to double tap on that because there's a lot there that I think a lot of operators don't really think about how their brand gets perceived as they start to make some of these decisions.
Yeah, I think the guest perception and the perception of quality and even to add to that a little bit of that emotional connection you build with a place. I mean, I think it maybe sounds a little silly, but when you show up at a place like once a week or at a time when you're celebrating with your kids because they won the Little League game, or there's a connection you build sharing that experience with those people that you love and care about. I think that helps people connect with the brand, and I think helps us get that next, when they're on the run and they need a few wings for takeout, that helps keep us top of mind. And it's fun to watch how those experiences grow, and I think that emotional connection to the brand is something that's significant. And I think a lot of different concepts kind of achieve that in different ways, whether we're talking real big concepts or mom and pop. But I think there's something about that dine-in experience that creates those memories and connection that's valuable that you never get in a drive-through, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. At least not yet. Maybe when these voice AI companies get good enough, it can feel more personal, but that's in the horizon. Curious. So you expanded out to different concepts. What was the impetus behind that? And tell me more about Sexy Sammies.
Sexy Sammies, we created, that was kind of during COVID, the ghost kitchens were all the rage, and I had a great team in place and allowed me some time for creativity and reflection on some directions we can grow the company. I think that the chicken sandwich wars were fresh in everybody's mind, and chicken's a comfortable place to be, and I wanted to kind of create a space where I could riff a little bit and express some creativity, and also take some of the skills and knowledge and wisdom that I think we've gathered over the past 20 years with Wing Shack, and help and kind of turn that into something new. So Sexy Sammy's was originally going to be just a ghost kitchen, and I pitched it to my ops director at the time, and he's like, "Brian, you're out of your mind. We're too busy even at our slow times to throw that whole new kitchen in there." So pretty quickly I was like, okay, well, we can't do this in the back of a Wing Shack. And then we actually had a location. It was kind of like just everything falling together. We had a location that came up that had a dining room that was larger than we wanted. I took that as an opportunity. We threw another kitchen in there and they started off side by side, but to take, that experience and then try to build what we were talking about before, that emotional connection and a quick service experience that builds a connection, right? We have kind of a highly designed space and that's designed to be a QSR, but a fun and modern kind of retro place to hang and have something as simple as a chicken sandwich. And then we tried to add that with kind of fun and creative. You know, we have a partnership with a chicken company, all natural, never antibiotics, air chilled chicken. So we had this great input, to take that to the next level and do some creative additions to the chicken sandwich. I think the chicken sandwich wars end up boring with 3 pickles on every sandwich. Like, why don't we throw some more action into these sandwiches and bring some modern flavors and some heat to the game, you know? So that's kind of how Sammy's came to be. And, and we made the decision, to go guest driven ordering too with a kiosk system. So kind of try to bridge, like, we don't need to take your order to build a connection with you. And that's really where we've tried to free the team up from just order taking, you know, do you want fries with that? But to have the team actually like talking with you and interacting with you in the brand as opposed to just order taking.
That's something you started doing right away with the kiosk, or did you add kiosks later down the line?
We went 100% kiosk out of the gate.
100%.
You know, that's part of modernizing and realizing that labor is going to continue to be a growing challenge in the industry. And how do we magnify the team members we have that have that gift to connect with people and really let them do that instead of, again, take orders and hand you cups and fill cups. And it's been a great experiment. I think there's been challenges, right? I mean, I think there's still some pushback on the kiosk only. And a lot of our bigger competitors have generally have an option. Although at those fast food restaurants, I feel like less and less you see somebody manning the front station, even though there's a station there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ghost employee. So it's been a challenge and I think successful in a lot of ways as well. In the team to actually kind of see the vision and connect to and not view that guest driven ordering as an excuse to stay in back is also been a bit of a challenge to build that culture of we're here to engage with you and be part of your experience, even though we're not taking your order.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really good point. And I've heard from certain operators that it is very challenging to deploy kiosks and still push the team to go out and engage with customers on the floor. How do you do that? How do you encourage your team to go out and get out and talk to the guests? And then as a follow up, I've been very curious to like hear from leaders like yourself on what truly defines hospitality in your eyes. Like what makes a good team member that can actually have that ability to connect with the guests? What does that mean to you?
Absolutely. You know, it's been training, good leadership and culture building that have really kept us centered on that connection with the guests and then hiring the right team members. There's a lot of people that can work hard in a kitchen that don't necessarily fill their cup from interacting with other people.
Yeah, that's
Try
true.
to have an interview process that, you know, we don't always win, but that really focuses on finding folks that get a little bit of satisfaction out of connecting with people and enjoy people. You know, not always your average kitchen person if we talk about stereotypes, but you know, for the most part, kind of building that into the culture and the training process has helped us select the people that do kind of find a love for hospitality and then talking about hospitality a lot. I think, you know, unreasonable hospitality coming through and kind of putting words behind something that I think we've been put in our culture and has been how we've set ourselves apart for years was a little transformative for us there. And, you know, just making hospitality part of the conversation. And of course, we need to, you know, food safety and consistency and quality. And there's the production side of what we do in the restaurant business. But the truly important and impactful and meaningful thing we do is to connect with people. And, you know, even if it's just a smile to somebody that's having a crappy day, right? That connection is huge. And that connection's, I believe, how us as a smaller chain or emerging chain or however you want to call us is going to continue to find a place in the market over some of these hugely funded larger chains and franchise groups that have huge amount of resources of finding locations and hiring people, but they all end up a little bit mechanized. And I think hospitality is defined as not being mechanized, is taking the time to really connect with people and finding some joy in connecting with people. I think feeding people is one of the truest and purest forms of caring about people. And, a lot of it's culture. I mean, hospitality is connecting with people on a little bit more of a level than service, and separating that in the team's mind of service. Like, yes, they need timely. Yes, we need to get them all the ranch in their order. Yes, we need to thank them for coming in. But how did we make a connection? How did we make you feel special? How did we make you feel appreciated for coming in? How do we make it feel like it was a meaningful experience, which in turn I think creates a more meaningful experience for the team, right? It's the best when you build connections with people and they come back and they're excited to bring their friends and you start to remember their order. And, that's the kind of relationships that are more rare, I think, in this modern age of
For
food.
sure.
How do we blend tech and hospitality? I'm not saying we do it perfect either. Come by a Sexy Sammies. I hope we charm you, but, it's a challenge, I think, to blend, and a challenge with our current workforce, right? Our workforce is now the first one that kind of grew up digitally fully,
For sure.
and the turbulence of COVID. And I think there's not always a comfortability with that, engaging with people on a personal level in person. So building that in is a challenge, but also I think a generation that is amazingly talented in a lot of ways and adaptable.
Agree. I agree. I love that. I think that as the world points us in one direction, whether it's more digital, more automation, even let's just say less touch points with people, you can still find ways to embed like the hospitality and the brand essence in that experience. And that's something that as a team, we're like constantly trying to think about ways we can do that without, losing the soul of what makes this industry run. At the end of the day, I don't believe in the thesis that food is a commodity and the joy of the experience shouldn't be completely eliminated. But there are ways to make your business more profitable, make your business more streamlined. Like you said, you're not the biggest fan of procedures, but there are some things that I'm sure you can agree that has helped you guys tremendously over the years, but still keeping that focus on how can you deliver the best experience. We need to write a book about that. How do you take unreasonable hospitality and then blend it with technology?
Yeah, and that's where my team and we get excited. I mean, the first party data we have and the ability to understand why you interact with us, when you purchase from us. Are you eating with us for a quick business lunch, or are you bringing your family in, or to understand our guests better, I think has enabled us to begin to get good at connecting with people through some more automated forms of marketing and drip campaigns, and using that data to also relate to our guests, not only in the store, but as we communicate with them after their experience, or if we haven't seen them with a while or seen them for a while. That's really an exciting part of what we're doing. And Sammy's and the kiosk allows us to get a little more data and a little more accurate data. That's really the challenge part too, is, I'm old school. I grew up in the restaurant. We can connect all day. We can teach people to connect. If we can pair that with the technology out there and use that to make a more meaningful relationship on top of it, I think that's where we get to the cutting edge of what restaurants are doing right now. Challenge for sure, but I think very possible.
Any technology that you're excited about in the next, couple years you see that you would want to place a bet and try?
It's been fun and interesting to embrace technology. We started that 20 years ago. It was like a Casio $90 Sam's Club cash register and handwritten tickets, and people
Sorry,
complaining
yeah,
about into this
you
idea
mentioned that.
into 40+% of our tickets come through a digital avenue. I think a few areas of technology that are interesting. Hopefully, this third party ordering and third party delivery. I think there's some worlds out there that there's some interesting stuff going on. There's a company called Nosh that we are part of. It's a co-op delivery in Northern Colorado. They'd be great for you to talk to. Right before COVID, we started. So about 32 of us restaurants in Northern Colorado got together and invested in our own third party technology. It's been a crazy road, right? You have restaurants getting together and working together to maybe find some avenues that aren't as controlled by tech companies that maybe don't have the industry or our communities first in mind is something I'm interested in. I think AI is such a buzzword right now, but I'm real curious into to mostly how we can use that to understand our guest data better and understand who's choosing to dine with us, when, why, where, and how, and to better speak to them, to make a better experience for them. There's just in this world we've gotten into with so much data. What do you do with it all, right? I think even
That's true.
the best, it gets murky and there's so much of it you get swallowed. What KPIs do we focus on? Where do we really do to move the needle? I think AI is going to be a hugely powerful tool to help us sift through a lot of that and probably take a lot of our gut feelings that I think a lot of leaders and founders and innovators kind of roll with and have a double check to that. I think that ability, like I just talked about too, to really interact with guests on a personal level, semi-personal level about their experience, about their next experience, will be a neat part of the industry.
Awesome. Last question for you. What's your favorite wing flavor?
Oh, favorite wing flavor, like in the world or at Wing Shack in particular?
I guess this is a plug for Wing Shack.
There we go. So Wing Shack, the golden hot, you got to get it. I like a little lemon pepper in there. It's a buttery based sauce with a little bit of that kind of traditional buffalo kick, and just enough habanero heat to roll. And then, we have a pretty banging teriyaki as well, that I really love when I want something sweet. Mix it with our Bear Hot. We'll shout out to the North Colorado Bears, but the Beariyaki is a banger. One of my favorite wings in the world, though, I got to shout out Puck Puck out of Portland, which I think is no longer, but there's a fish sauce wing that they make. It's probably the best wing I've ever tried.
Interesting.
A little much.
How does it compare to the wing you had in Thailand?
And as a kid, kind of similar vibe, but yeah, one of those I was telling you when we talked earlier about that moment that kind of sometimes you'd have those moments where you connect with the food and the people and the places around you. And there was that one wing when I was 16 on the first international trip that changed my world and hopefully the world of deliciousness for Northern Colorado and beyond, coming down the pipe here.
This is an ode to Anthony Bourdain. The moment that changed his entire career was he was in France and had I think it was a clam, a fresh clam, and that completely changed his life because he got a chance to try some really delicious food. I appreciate everything you do. I love the story. I wish you guys nothing but the best with growth ahead, and keep your team strong, and keep the energy alive. Thank you,
Absolutely.
Brian.
Thanks for letting me chat your ear off a little bit.
Appreciate it. Take care.
Have a good one.